on budgets. The questions are, if I had a budget, how much should I spend? That's the first question. How do you know how much to spend? If you're a new business, you really don't have that answer. So what I would do is I would compare yourself to the competition. That's why when you're looking at competitive advertising, you're trying to understand what they spend, and if you could tie that together, it'll give you a good guide on what to spend for yourself, right? So outspending the competition doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be more successful than them. You could create very creative ads and still be competitive. So it all depends on what that looks like. So you have to think that through a little bit. So you don't necessarily have to outspend your competition to be competitive. You could be more creative, and you could be more viral and outdo the competition too. So there's different ways that you can look at it. So if I was going to set a budget up, the first thing I want to know is, first, what my message is, right? You have to know what your message is. So by now you already have that answer. You know what your message is. You also need to know who your target is. You have that focused as well. So let's say you decide to do Facebook. And you want to do Facebook ads over here. So you're going to have Facebook ads. Let me get so I can reset that a little bit. So let's do Facebook ads over here. And what else do you want to do? Maybe you want to do IG, right? Instagram. We'll do Instagram ads here. And let's say you want to do some community type marketing. Let's call it a magazine, a community magazine. You probably get better return on your investment on social media than you would a magazine. Well, let's just use that as an example, okay? So that's the first thing I would set up, is where I'm taking the message. You have to have your message, where your message will fit. Does your message fit in all three channels that you want to advertise in? Does the message fit in Facebook? Does it fit in Instagram? Of course, there's different formats that you have to meet, right? And does it fit in the magazine? So how does that message carry across all those three different things? And in this case, what I want to do is, let's just do quarters. So quarters would be easily, so if you can have Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. So that's pretty simple on your quarters. And then I would fill in your dollar amount of what you're spending in each quarter. So let's talk about how do you get to that dollar amount. In order to get to that dollar amount, you have to understand your revenue first, right? So your revenue is here. And we don't know what that number is. We're going to come out to that number. Hey, come on. So let's decide what your revenue is, okay? And then under your revenue, and this goes into your budgeting too. So under your revenue, you also want to have your cost. And your cost will be a combination of, in this case, for this plan, let's do what we call SG&A. Let's do COGS. And let's do, actually I'm going to erase that. Let me start over. Let's start with COGS first. So to set up your budget for marketing, the first thing you should do is understand what your revenue is, right? So we have revenue, COGS, SG&A, and then marketing. That's your cost. So let's back that out. And then over here you would have that's going to equal your total profit, right? So how do we get to revenue? Well, we're forecasting revenue. Let's say you're selling something for $1. And if you sell something for $1, the question is, how many units will you sell? How many units will you sell? Let's say in this case, I sell 1,000 units per year. We'll try to keep the math as simple as possible. 1,000 units per year, and that's going to equal $1,000, right? Everybody see the math there? Mm-hmm. Okay. So $1,000 is my revenue. So my revenue is $1,000. I'll put that there. Okay. Then I have my COGS. Let's say you're selling a product, or if you're doing a service, there's a cost of delivering that service. And your cost could be a combination of variable cost and fixed cost. That's your total cost. and now you put that there, cost of goods sold. That's what COGS stands for, cost of goods sold. In most cases, your COGS will be about 50%. Probably 40%, in some cases 30%, but let's use 50 as an average right now. So if I use 50% here as a number, that means my COGS here is $500, right? Everybody see that? 50% of 1,000 will give me $500. The next line is your SG&A. What is SG&A? That's selling, general administrative expenses. Now, finance and accounting might freak out about this, but for our marketing, we're just sort of bucketing things so we have a good understanding of what we're doing. SG&A normally runs about 10%. It averages between 8 to 15. So let's say that 10% as an average. You should never have your expenses on your HR, your general administrative expenses more than 10 or 15%. It's a big part of the company, but you have to make sure you're managing that expense. So let's say it's 10%. That means that's $100, right? 10% of $1,000 of revenue is $100. The next item is your marketing. How much do you want to spend on marketing? Spend it all, right? Spend it all.
5%.
Yeah, 5%? Ooh, wow, no, you gotta hide that. Let's say a new business should spend at least 20% of every dollar they make, maybe even 30% of every dollar they make in marketing to help it. But for our plan, let's put 20%, okay?
Okay.
So 20% for marketing, that's $200. Everybody see that? So now if I back out, if I have 5, 1, 2, that's $800. From 1,000, your total gross profit is going to be $200. Make sense? Okay. So that's sort of how you would estimate your revenue, and you're estimating your revenue based upon what you think you're going to sell, looking at competitive type information. That's going to be key too. How do you tie into competitive information there? So let's move this out of here for a second. So that would be year one, right? That'll be year one. The next thing we want to do is year 2, and perhaps year 3, because you need to really go out 3 years. So now you just use an increase of business. How quickly do you think your business will grow? What do you want to add on to that? If you grow 10% every year organically, so that would be 1/100, right? And then if you grow another 10% the next year, that'll be 1/210, let's call it. So you have to factor in your growth. Then once you factor in your growth rate, you have to ask yourself, will my cost of goods sold go up as my revenue goes up? If you're selling more products, your cost of goods obviously will tie into the unit sales, because you're selling 10% more units, so your cost of goods sold will be 10% more. But in some cases, your SG&A will stay the same because maybe you didn't add on more people, or perhaps you've got more efficient, and your marketing should stay the same, but I would spend more money to increase your business, so your marketing may go up. So you have to adjust it year by year. So at the end of the day, maybe your total COGS would go up to $550 because we're going up 10%. Your SGA would stay the same, and maybe you spend $300 on marketing instead. So now you have $950, and your $950 total, and then your profit $950 from 11 is what? $150, right? Gross profit. So you see how you're adding the math out, because that's all. And then you do the same thing for year 3. In most cases, if you're starting a new business, in most cases, this might be a negative. You might break even here in year 2, and you might start seeing some profits in year 3, in most cases. Now, if you're running a business, you want to be profitable as quickly as possible. So maybe you want to hit profitability, or at least break even in year 1, or somewhere between 112 and 18. That might be hard to do, but that's what you have to understand. So when you start a business, you have to realize your first year you might not make $0. You might make no money. It might even roll into the second year where you don't make any money. That's why you have to have some type of financial backing. You have to have some type of support. A lot of entrepreneurs do not take a salary their first year because they're investing in the company, they're paying for their expenses. So that's the way to really get started. So you have to think about those things. As an entrepreneur, where do I want to be in year 1, year 2, year 3? Understand the expectations are that you might not be profitable in year 1 unless you have a magical formula to a magical product or something like that. So you might not be there, but assume that you'll be negative year 1 and hope to break even or work to break even by year 2, and maybe by year 3 you'll start to be profitable. And that's what I would sort of lay out in my plan, okay? So that's your sales budget. Now, how do we take the sales budget or the forecast budget, the revenue budget, and tie that into our marketing strategy? Well, where do we get this marketing number from? We have it right here, right? It's $200. So now I know in year 1, I want to spend $200 in marketing. So I'm breaking that out by quarter. So $200 divided by 4 is, we'll do simple math, $50 a quarter, okay? $50 a quarter, that's what I'm spending on my marketing. Now I have to ask myself, okay, if I'm spending $50 a quarter on marketing, how much do I want to spend on each one of these channels? Facebook, I probably spend, I don't know, 20 bucks if I had $50 to spend, right? Instagram, I probably spend $20. And magazine, I probably spend $10 to get started. Now remember, it has to be repetitive. If you're doing a print magazine or something like that, it has to be repetitive. So you just can't do one ad and expect to be successful. You have to be repetitive, so you have to have at least 2 or 3 ads on a regular basis there. So you have to plan that out. We're talking about quarterly, so if you're doing a monthly publication, you have to have at least an ad every single month. So the consumer picks it up and is able to repeat that over and over again, okay? So that's a breakdown. Now you have to ask yourself, would I do the same breakdown in quarter 2? There's a plan, you can lay it out. So let's just lay it out the same, just for now. 20, 20, 10, all the way through, right? So initially, that's what I look like when I start. I have it laid out evenly. If I'm doing a magazine, I know what the editorial calendar is. In my head, I have a calendar for social media, because you should have a plan for social media, what your messaging is, and your calendar there. And I roll it out, quarter 1. I start. And then what do? You look at your analytics. So by month 2, in quarter 1, by month 2, you really have your analytics. You understand what's working. You look at the analytics and you see, oh my goodness, Facebook is really not working the way I expected it to be. So then you have to make a decision. Do I stay with Facebook as heavy as I'm doing it, or do I find another social media? Do I look, do I go more to Instagram? Well, you have to look at those analytics too, to see if, the Instagram analytics make sense. Or maybe, surprise, maybe the magazine is driving new customers for you. You have to look at that too. So you have to be flexible, you have to look at your analytics. So I would start off at a point where you're doing everything the same, but you shouldn't stay there. You shouldn't stay there. You need to adjust it. You need to adjust it every single quarter, every single month. It's really hard to tell month to month what's happening. You probably need 6 weeks of data to really make a decision on things. So you might have a rolling 6 weeks and change it as the data changes as well. That could work. So in quarter 2, you might change it up. By the time you get to quarter 1 and quarter 1's ending, you're planning quarter 2, you might say, you know what? That magazine did nothing for me. That magazine did nothing for me. I'm not spending another penny on the magazine. Okay, so now you increase this. So let's say I split it, because Facebook and Instagram, when I look at the analytics, gave me almost the same type of results. So now I put more money there. So now I take my $50 and I go 25, 25, and I do 0 on the magazine because it didn't give me the results. There's no way to know that until you get the results, right? So that's what you have to do when you lay out your budget. So that would be your promotional budget, and then this will be your revenue budget. Make sense? Everybody see that? Okay. All right. Question?
But for effects of the project, we are going to do it the same in all the quarters?
That,
Or
in the beginning, I would, yeah, I mean, I said it that way.
Yeah, our initially.
Initially,
initially,
have to be
I
the
mean, for
same.
the project that we are going to present?
yeah,
we
I would do
wouldn't
it, I would do the
have
same, right?
because
Unless,
you don't know.
you don't know what's gonna happen,
Right.
right? Even in reality, you don't know what's gonna happen, right? So I would do it the same. You might wanna get creative though, you might wanna say, you know, because quarter four, what happens in quarter four? What-
Seasonal.
That's all the seasonal business, right? So maybe you wanna increase your
Maybe you
total
wanna do
spend.
75.
Yeah, you might wanna do 75 here and make this only 25.
Mhm.
Because you can move it around. Because quarter three is sort of the
Usually
sum.
people are spending a lot of money, so they're not
Yeah,
actually gonna
right,
spend
it's
like
a lighter months, right, because you have,
kids start school.
you have, right, you have August, September, you have back to school there, quarter two could be light too, because in quarter two, you have what, April, May, June, which are still okay, but then when you get into July, August, and September, July and August are really slow months, so you might wanna lighten this up, right, so maybe you only spend $30 there, and you put the extra $20 in quarter four. So you could spread it out. Now, to your point though, I think it's important to know, in the beginning, if you're starting a business, you don't have those answers yet. So the most important thing you can do when you lay out your budget, when you lay out your marketing plan, your marketing strategy, is have a forward strategy on paper, and then lay it out by quarter or by month. You could break down the quarter by month also, and then by channel. And then come back and look at the analytics to say, okay, what does this look like? Did I get the return on investment that I expect in quarter one from Facebook? Did I get the return on investment in quarter two? And then make the adjustments. Make the adjustments. Because if you do the same thing all year long, what's gonna happen? You'll get the same results. Now, if your results are phenomenal, they're that good, then yeah, I wouldn't mess around. I wouldn't change anything. You know, maybe I'd tweak it a little bit. And then we're not talking about the messaging, because obviously you want to do your A/B splitting, you want to do your testing on messaging all the way in between here. So a lot of variables could happen here. If your Facebook campaign crashes or burns or doesn't do well, there could be a lot of reasons. You can have the wrong demographics, you can have the wrong messaging, there could be a lot of reasons why it doesn't work. So I wouldn't give up on it the first time around. I would come back and revamp the messaging to see if it makes sense to redo it again. And then go back and do it again. And then if you've tried 3 or 4 messaging, if you tried different techniques and you're still not getting the results, then maybe it might be time to move on. One thing to think about though also is, does Facebook tie into your demographic? And the messaging has to be different too, because the demographic on Facebook is different than the demographic to people on Instagram. The messaging could be the same, but the presentation might have to be different, right? Instagram, you've got stories, you have a lot of more functionality. There's a lot of things you do on Instagram. Facebook has the ability to do some stuff too, but you have to make sure it makes sense, right? That's going to be the key thing. So start with your revenue, come up with an estimation on what you think you're going to make, break it down by year. In a real big budget, you probably want to break it down by month, and then you tie it into your promotional strategy. That's going to be key. That's sort of what you would do there. Okay, make sense?
Yeah.
All right, any questions on that section?
When we talk about the budget, like for example, the $20 for Instagram on quarter one,
Yeah.
those $20 are gonna reflect the production of the content, plus if we wish to do.
It's your all-in expense. So that's a good question. So we understand that we have to pay to place the ad, but then we also have to, maybe in some cases, pay to create the ad. So when I say marketing expense, it's all in. It's all in. Unless in your SG&A, you have a marketing person or a graphic design person that's doing it for you, then that's covered in that section.
Yeah,
right?
so I can either specify if in my SGA or even in my marketing expenses, if I have one cost for content production, let's
Right.
call it like that,
That's right.
and then what I have left, it's the things that I'm gonna reflect on that board to show the
To
ad
spend.
costs
Yeah.
that I'm spending, right?
Yeah, but just keep in mind that your marketing, we took marketing, we have a big bucket of marketing here.
Mhm.
So that marketing includes everything. It includes the space that you're renting, it includes the graphic design that you're doing, it includes buying the ad, it includes administering the ad. All that is over here at the marketing budget. Because if you hired an agency to do it, that would fall under your marketing budget, more or less. The agency would fall under your marketing budget. Now, if you hired a graphic designer in-house, depending upon how you set up your payroll and all that fun stuff, it can fall into the marketing budget. Because I can tell you that sometimes if you hire somebody, it ties into a budget that you have for the department. But if you're a small company, you know.
Maybe inside the cost of goods sold, one of my employees can be assigned to
Yeah,
X amount.
it's all flexible. I don't, you know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't get stuck on that yet, but it's a good question, it's a good point, because as you drill down to your business, you wanna be able to understand that a little more.
Okay.
So that makes sense, okay? All right, any other questions?
So the SGA for the third year probably remain the same, or?
Yeah, I'm keeping it steady all the way through, unless your growth is so
So big
exponential that you
extra.
have to hire more people. Generally speaking, you can get through growth of 10% with the same staff. But if you're doubling your growth, you might be able to get through a double in growth with the same staff too, but you might have to consider bringing on more people at some point in the game. Right, so it all depends on what your growth rate is. If your growth rate is that exponentially quick, then you might have to add on more people, okay?